Menopause. Why aren't we talking about this? I'm on a mission that no woman should suffer in silence. I'm on a mission to increase awareness and create a community. I'm on a mission to make this M word mainstream. I'm on the menopause mission. We know that a shift in hormones are the driver of transition into menopause and postmenopause itself. But did you know that there is a yoga specific to hormone regulation? Corinne, you are a hormone yoga therapist. Would that be accurate?
I would say hormone yoga therapy teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what is hormone yoga therapy?
Hormone yoga therapy is a unique method of yoga that is meant to increase our levels of hormones and balance them. So specifically, we're talking about the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So the three, let's call them our sex hormones. So our endocrine system consists of the glands, the pituitary, the thyroid, and the ovaries.
Okay.
And those glands, it's like a delicate dance every month between what's going on in our pituitary and what's going on in our thyroid and what's going on with the ovaries. And so with hormone yoga therapy, or with practicing the method of hormone yoga therapy, we can balance out the three hormones that we're talking. There's lots of hormones in our body,
yes,
but the specific ones are those three. And things start shifting around the age of 35 for most people. It could start sooner and it could start earlier, but medically they're saying 35 is around the age when things start shifting. And it might be at a time in a person's life where they're really, really busy. They're on top of their career, they're raising a family, there's lots going on. So the shifts are subtle that they might not even notice that things are happening. Mm-hmm. But usually by about 44, 45, we start noticing, wait a minute, things are really shifting and my period just isn't like it used to be. It's becoming irregular. Where I used to be regular, it's getting heavier. My PMS is off the wall. I'm not sleeping. And so there are so many symptoms. I read that there's maybe 60 plus symptoms.
Yes, as have I.
Related. I mean, some things will say there's 40, but I think that there's 60 or more.
Or more.
And there's symptoms that we can't even imagine that it's a symptom. And so through teaching hormone yoga therapy to women from all over the world and in person, across Canada and a little bit in the US before the pandemic, I learned about symptoms that aren't in the books. And right, these people, like, they're not going to lie that these are the symptoms that they're feeling. And they might not always be that symptom. They might be, it may come and go.
So what were some of these things? I'm so curious now.
Oh, well, one of them is called, it's where you feel like bugs are crawling on your skin. And I actually can't remember off the top of my head the name of that one, but I've never had that symptom, but they feel like bugs are crawling. Like, they'll look and they'll be like, there's nothing there. And then they've gone to the doctor, and the doctor has sometimes said, well, maybe it's, eczema or asthma, or not asthma, but eczema or psoriasis, but there's nothing actually there. Other doctors have said it's all in your head.
Right.
And I don't believe in stuff like that. It's like they're feeling it. It's
yes,
there. So that's something. One of the symptoms that I had no idea was a perimenopausal symptom was achy joints.
Mm-hmm. Which is just a testament to the fact that the transition is unique to each person.
It is.
And that is your real lived experience. So the in your head makes me so angry inside, because we know what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
And then there's a bit of the diminishing of that lived experience. And so this is why we're creating these conversations in these spaces to talk about this, because somebody's going to watch and go, oh my gosh, I've been feeling that too.
Yeah.
That explains things. And as soon as we have an explanation or affirmation, there's empowerment.
And it all makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can do something about it. Take action. So I want to ask you the most important question.
Ooh, okay.
Why do you do what you do?
Oh, why do I do what I do? So when I was I got married when I was 18. And we moved to Montreal. Or my husband was in Montreal going to school, and I went to quit school in Edmonton, went to Montreal, and within a very short period of time, I bought Spiritual Midwifery. So this book, and in a bookstore, health food store, and I said to my husband, when we start our family, we will do it just like this. I'm going to go to the farm in Tennessee, and I'm going to have my baby there. And of course, that was not too realistic. So, a few years later, 5 years later, when we were expecting our first one, living back in Edmonton, so it was 84, 85, we opted for a home birth. And so from the time I was very young, I was interested in women's health and well-being, without wanting to pursue being a nurse or a midwife or a doctor. And I started practicing yoga in high school. And so yoga has always been a part of my journey. It's always been there. And, raised a family, and then I took my teacher training in the mid-2000s. So I do it because I 100% know and believe that this is the answer for hormones that are making you have these symptoms, the hormonal shifts that are creating sort of havoc and a little bit of chaos, let's call it. And I find it very easy. It's not expensive. You don't have to go visit anybody once a week for a tune-up. You do your own tune-up. You do it. And I manage my symptoms by doing the sequence. I do it 2 or 3 times a week. I still do it 2 or 3 times a week. And on holidays, let's say I'm busy doing holidays and I'm not doing it, I come back and I'm right back on the mat. So, yeah, and that's why I do it, because it speaks to me more than any other modality has ever spoken to me. I've tried lots of different things for my headaches and my joint aches, and this is the one that worked for me. So, and like thousands and thousands and thousands of women in Europe and South America. Yeah. So it is my mission to bring it to as many people as possible, whether they're in person or online. Hormone yoga therapy isn't common in North America.
Yeah,
as
why
we
is
talked
that?
about. I would say because there's not enough teachers. There's not enough. So I'm one of very few teachers in all of North America, Canada and the US, who are actively, there might be teachers who have been certified by the founding person of hormone yoga therapy, but they're not actively teaching.
Okay.
And so I'm one of very few.
Oh.
Yeah, I found this in 2016.
Okay.
And then got certified in 2017.
So what was the certification process then?
You have to be a minimum 200 hour yoga teacher. That's how we look at our sort of designation.
Yeah.
And minimum 200, I was 500 plus.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. And I was having lots of hormonal shifts.
Okay.
That my doctor kind of was listening to me, and I love my doctor, but she was handing me medication, and so I was thinking, okay, well, I'll take the medication. Migraines, the aches and the pains in the body. I've never had hot flashes or night sweats, touch wood. So, because it can still happen postmenopausally. So I learned from her, but then I started Googling hormones, yoga, and I'd been teaching for, the mid-2000s, and I thought that, I've gone to yoga for other things, so maybe there's something for this. I've taught yoga for pregnancy and yoga for post-pregnancy, so always in sort of a women's container.
Right.
And so I did an online search, and I found Dina Rodriguez from Brazil, who created this, and I ordered her book.
Okay. So
And I got the book.
Dina Rodriguez.
Yeah, Dina Rodriguez.
Who is Dina?
She's the grandmother of hormone yoga therapy. She created it in 1992, actually, which is really cool. So she was 60 years old, and yoga teacher and psychologist. Might I mention, she's turning 96 next month.
Wow.
And still going strong, teaching online.
Amazing.
In Brazil. Yeah, she's just outside of Sao Paulo. So I got the book and I learned the sequence, which we can talk about in a bit, and started feeling already better. Started feeling like my headaches aren't as frequent, they're not as long. I just started feeling better. I also had brain fog, and I couldn't even go into a grocery store without a panic attack. Yeah, so I mean, and people can probably relate to some of this, and then other things they're like, well, I haven't felt that, but I've had the hot flushes or night sweats.
The brain for me has been significantly impacted, especially because I have gone through what would be considered earlier menopause.
Yes.
So I am postmenopausal.
And you're quite young.
Very.
Young.
And so, very. But
young in the in that shift, because you started earlier.
Correct. So the cognitive ability or inability rather, the feeling like I was going crazy, the memory loss, that has definitely been significantly impacted, yes.
So after I learned the sequence on my own, I decided that because it was helping me so quickly, I need to teach this. And there's nowhere I can no one I can learn from, and I wanted to be certified so that I could teach it while being certified. So I went to, that was November 2017, she was doing a course in English, but actually in like 5 different languages. We had a translator in Santiago, Chile.
Oh.
So long trip for me, short trip for her, but when she does them in Brazil, they're in Portuguese. Okay, so this was in English, and she does speak pretty fluent English. And so, yeah, I spent a week there doing my teacher training for hormone yoga therapy, and just felt like this is just my true calling. So at the time, I was a birth doula, and I was looking at ways to shift out of that work, of being a doula and being on call and being up all night, and I'd been doing it for a long, long time.
Yes.
And I wanted to add something to my yoga and on a professional level, and this spoke to me, and I've been hit the ground running as soon as I got back. Yeah.
So Chile, what was that trip like? What was it like to meet Dina in person? I mean, you had read the book, this was the answer, it was a calling, and then you go.
And then I went, yeah. It was amazing. We were a small group of 8 ladies from all over the world, Mexico, Argentina, Europe, everywhere. And we come into this space with our mentor, with our teacher for one reason, and she's strict. Like, you don't make a mistake at all, and she corrects you. So if anybody has had any elders as their teachers, you might kind of understand what I'm talking about. It's like,
it's like the ruler in the classroom, or
absolutely.
That used to be allowed, that's not allowed.
Yeah, it's definitely, I want to use the word old school. I don't know if that's really the right way of saying it, but what it does is that because hormone yoga therapy is big in Europe and parts of South America, but not in North America, because there's not a whole lot of us teachers, but she needs us all on the same page.
Yes.
Because after our week with her, it's like hug, hug, bye-bye, and maybe never see her again in person. Because and when I did it, she was turning 90 or just turned 89, so she'll be 96 in May. And she's currently, she is still teaching for people who want to become teachers. And so I felt very fortunate and very lucky that I got to do this, obviously before the pandemic. But when I brought it back home to Edmonton, I started out really small, teaching in studios around Edmonton and St. Albert and Sherwood Park. And then I kind of felt like, well, maybe I'll go to Vancouver. Found a studio in Vancouver who had never heard of it, took their chance. So did Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Los Angeles.
You take hormone yoga therapy on tour, rock star.
I called it I have pictures of me with my backpack and my yoga mat at the airport, and I'm like, I'm on tour as a hormone yoga therapy teacher. And honestly, it felt like a party. A work party. It was fabulous. So,
well, you're coming in and introducing a new concept as well. So
absolutely.
You're a trailblazer. You're paving the way.
Absolutely, and the fact that it is so new here. I mean, even though she created it in '92 and has been working at it, I mean, it got really big in Germany and Czech Republic, and is still really big in those two countries. And I don't understand really why, other than I think folks there are really drawn towards natural or holistic, let's call it, modalities.
Yep.
I think, and yoga is very big in Germany, so maybe that's why. I don't know, but it's something like I don't think she'll be here at this stage. I don't think she's flying anywhere at this stage in her career. Can you imagine 96 years old and still teaching?
But she has these ambassadors, such as yourself, that are going to carry on this legacy. So even this conversation is about spreading the word in regards to something that can really help people.
Yeah, and that's how I see it. And so obviously collectively things changed for us when they had to a few years ago. So I decided that, well, I can't go to the studio because all the studios are closed, and I can't fly because the airlines aren't flying anybody anywhere. So why don't I take the yoga to people? So I created the online self-paced course, and it's through one of the programs that, there's several of them out there that are very user-friendly. Yeah. And so hormone yoga therapy is quite easy to learn because it's 21 postures that are user friendly and easy and for all bodies, and you don't have to be flexible or have any yoga experience or even knowledge because it's all in the program.
I love that. I like that there's the inclusivity aspect to it. Accessible.
Absolutely. There is a couple contraindications that I'd like to speak to, and one is you wouldn't do this if you were pregnant. Okay. So, because pregnancy is a contraindication. And, somebody is, let's say, 40-ish, and they're starting to feel perimenopausal, but they get pregnant because they're still getting a period and they're still ovulating. So it's like, people can still get pregnant until that period is complete that whole year. That's until you're considered. So it's a very delicate time in our life when we're, that age, can still get pregnant, don't want to be on the birth control or IUD, and what do we do? So, so I created the online program, and then that really did well during the height of the pandemic. I launched it in November 2020. Okay. And so kind of like, when we were all at home. Yep. And it spread throughout. I don't know how many other teachers did what I did, but I seem to be meeting students that are joining it and practicing it from all over the place, like as far as Singapore, all parts of the States, some parts of Europe, France, Germany, or not Germany, France and Italy. Yeah, so from all over the place, and obviously across Canada. And So it's meant to be a home practice. So it's not necessarily meant to be, I'm going to go to my hormone yoga therapy class every week, because it's 21 postures, and once you learn those 21 postures, you repeat them every time, every day.
Right. So you have the 21 postures, that you have the repetition.
Right.
What is significant about the repetition?
Very good question. So because we are focusing on the pituitary, which is if you go in through the third eye and right through the crown and in through the temple, right in the middle there's your pituitary, and that's the master gland. That's the gland that basically makes you want to have sex. It's the one that makes you get your period. It's the master gland.
Yeah.
So we focus on that one, the thyroid and the ovaries.
Okay.
Now, if somebody has had their ovaries removed or a thyroid removed, they can still practice this, and we still have energetic space in those areas. So just because you had a thyroid removed doesn't mean like you were born with your thyroids, you were born with your ovaries.
Yeah.
So that energetic space is still there, because that's a question that I get.
Yeah.
I've had a hysterectomy, my ovaries have been removed. Will this be beneficial?
Right. Will it still impact me if I don't have these glands?
Exactly, 100%, yeah. So the first little bit of the practice is a warming up. And it's not like any type of yoga that anybody can relate to, because there's no downward dogs, there's no planks, there's no upward dogs, there's no triangles.
Okay.
There's no butterflies. So it's a lot of breath work. And then we combine it with movement. And what we're doing is we're massaging the glands with our breath and with the movement. So we do a little warm up, and then we go into the series. So the warm up is 7 postures, and then there's 14 more postures.
Okay.
And within that time period, we massage both thyroids, like both sides, one side, the other side, the ovaries, one side, the other side, and then lots of visualization. So the visualization is where we're working the pituitary.
Right.
And then guided meditations. So you'll hear my voice guiding you through, we call them yoga nidras, but they're guided meditations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got that all on my platform.
Okay. And we were talking about the repetition. So why the repetition?
Because it gets the chi moving.
Ah.
It's one of these things that we call magic. So does anybody, or have you ever had a practitioner, a massage therapist, or a chiropractor who you would leave, or your acupuncturist, where you leave and you're like, oh my God, that person is magic. They've got a magic ability or a magic hands. So the individual doing the hormone yoga therapy is creating magic within their own body.
Right. Which is the movement of the chi energy.
And the massage of the area around the ovaries with specific movement, and same with the glands of the thyroid, and then same with the pituitary. And then indirectly the adrenals too, which are located at the lower back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this manageable movement seems to be really what our bodies are craving or need at this time of transition, which is a time of slowing down.
Exactly.
And you talk about the running and the aerobics and the pickleball and volleyball. And I mean, I'm hearing more and more that our body needs that almost methodical movement at this time.
Yeah, it's like a meditation.
Right?
Yeah. So, and that's a really good point, is that our cortisol in perimenopause, and so whatever age that is for a person. So for me, I would say that my perimenopause probably started around 43, 44. I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was a busy mom working full-time with 4 teenagers, and was just like, what's that called? Like being pulled in so many different
Overwhelmed.
directions. Overwhelmed. Yeah, overwhelmed.
That's what that's called.
Yeah.
I know that word.
And then, you the kids are fighting and you go into the bedroom and you lock the door or whatever, you close the door and you just like, and almost like you're feeling like you're, trying to get those deep breaths. Or I remember sitting in my car and dropping my girls off at ballet and being like, meanwhile I might have like a coffee because I'm going to be up till midnight because I've got work to do after everyone.
Stimulant.
Yeah, and so I mean it was just like, oh my God, and often we refer to that as adrenal fatigue, and so, but you got to keep going because people are counting on you and waiting for you, and I had the supermom syndrome. I did have, and much of us do have it, even though we like to think, oh, I don't, but anyways. But it was a few years later where I started getting the achy joints and the headaches where I was like, wait a minute. And my mom had passed away when I was 38, so I didn't have my mama to ask her. Yeah. I didn't have an aunt that I was close enough to, so I really felt alone. Actually, when I found Dina, I was like, I don't know you, you're a complete stranger, but this is everything I'm going through. Am I normal? Yeah, and it was just like that, sort of like that. So a lot of my time in Santiago, Chile, after class was just walking the streets and smelling flowers and being like, oh, nothing's wrong with me. This is all natural and normal, but what we say in hormone yoga therapy is, you don't need to suffer. You don't need to suffer. And so a lot of times we start feeling weight coming on, and as our cortisol levels increase and our stress levels increase, the weight increases, whether you're eating more or not or less. So you're running. So you're like, I'm going to go for that extra run, or I'm going to get on the treadmill, or this or that. And really, what's happening is, in some of those exercises, like the running, the hardcore stuff, high impact, is impacting our hormones.
Exacerbating the symptoms?
Yeah, you've got all.
Is that the word?
Exactly. It's just making things worse. And people often wonder with hormone yoga, they're like, when I was doing it in person, they'll come and they'll like lay on the mat, start like, they think that they're going to do restorative and that we're just going to be rolling around on the bolster and stuff. And when I start with what we're doing, they're quite surprised, but they're like, but I don't feel tired. Like I don't feel like when I've gone to the treadmill or the step machine, I don't feel different. And I'm like, yeah. And after you do it for 6 months, check your resting heart rate when you sleep. Right. See how nice and low, like see that you're bringing it down, because we want to bring it down when we sleep. Right. Yeah, so Gina calls them the exercises. She doesn't even call them really asanas or yoga poses, but they're called exercises. The exercises. The hormone exercises or hormone yoga exercises. And people all start noticing that their symptoms start reducing and then eliminating. Hot flashes and night sweats, number 1. Insomnia, number 2. Almost within a week. Like really quickly.
So I want to circle back to the suffering in silence, because that was the catalyst for the menopause mission. Yeah. For these conversations to be occurring. Yeah. I too lost my mom at a very young age.
You were very young.
I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And have since lost my grandmother this last year.
The matriarch of the family.
100%. Yeah. And these knowledge bearers. Yeah. Right? And so when they're gone, I think we as women are seeking the matriarchal mentorship in our lives, right? And we need that. We need to talk about things, and we need to feel supported, and we need to feel that sense of community that we came from. We came from villages where we would take care of one another, right? Yeah. So Dina, was that for you?
She definitely was. I don't have any sisters. And so lost my mom at, I felt was a young age, and I don't have any sisters, and Love my mother-in-law to bits, but we didn't have that type of relationship. Now I talk to her about hormone yoga therapy all the time, and she's 81, and she told me that she's getting hot flashes again. Yes, you can get.
I've heard this recently from a friend's mom.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're scot-free like once you've completed that 1 year and your
it can circle back around.
Yeah, not as intense, not
right.
as often, but she did mention to me, and she said, maybe you need to teach me some of those exercises. I'm like, for sure, let's do it. Yeah.
Even if our mums were around, women didn't talk about these things because the generation that how they were raised was hush, 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 and shush, 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 and children are seen, not heard, and that's not polite. That's improper etiquette, if you will.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
We got to break this open.
We got to break it open, and I also think that part of that generation was, and my doctor did offer me hormone replacement therapy.
Yes.
And so I chose not to, but I don't let anybody, and everybody makes their own decision of my students, right? That's not part of my realm. But they ask me lots of questions of my opinion and what do I think, and then they tell me their experience. And what I often say for women who are on hormone replacement therapy is, are you having side effects? Are the good things that you're receiving outweighing the side effects, the bad things? And I mean, these are just questions for themselves. They don't have to share with me. And then, do you need some sort of exercise program anyways? Like, still stay on your replacement therapy. Yeah. And that's between you and your doctor. But what does your exercise look like? Well, I don't do anything. I walk a little bit, half an hour a day. I'm like, well, would you like to do some breathing exercises combined with some yoga that could help you with your hormones? Yeah. You know, elevating those levels of the estrogen, because that's what really goes down in peri and menopause is the estrogen levels. So, you know, most people are like, yeah, I would love to exercise. Nobody generally says, some people say I don't have much time, and I'm like, half an hour. You only need half an hour.
Yeah, and it's about making the time.
Yeah.
So,
but this is important that people know that half an hour is all they need for this, for hormone yoga. So it's not, oh my God, I need to carve out 75 minutes. I need to have a yoga mat. I need to have this. You really don't. You can have a towel, a blanket, and 30 minutes is all. 25 to 30 minutes is all a person needs. In a perfect world, 5 times a week. Okay. But we don't live in a perfect world, so let's say 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
Yeah.
And that can help. And you said in sometimes even just a week's time.
Yeah, it's the hot flashes and night sweats and insomnia. So people in perimenopause who have insomnia normally can fall asleep quite easily. And then there's this time between like 2 and 4 a.m. Am I spot on?
It's the witching hour, and then it's getting back to sleep. Can you see my bags?
Yeah. No, I can't.
It's a full moon as well, so it may have been a really rough night.
You look great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, but it's 2 to 4 a.m., and I don't know if there's any scientific correlation to the 2 to 4 a.m., but it seems to be like common.
Yes.
And then some people can fall back asleep, but then they can't get up at 8 o'clock. Like now they want to sleep in till because they've missed 2 or 3 hours, and it's like having an infant again.
Yes, it is.
And being up with a brand new baby.
Yes, it is. I thought I was past this. You know, I don't get woken up in the morning even, and now it's myself.
Yeah, so it can be really quickly that the shifts happen. And arthritis too. I mean, that's the inflammation that is very common, and we start noticing it all around the same age. And so because there's no weight-bearing exercises, there's no downward dogs or hands and knees, then you don't have to worry about, you know, the arthritis that might be in your knuckles or your wrists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, just that accessibility piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the research around hormone yoga therapy that has been conducted.
As I take a big breath.
Good for you.
So, unfortunately, there's no money in researching yoga. And I don't know a whole lot about, like, to be completely, fully transparent and honest, I don't know a whole lot about research for yoga in general, but physicians seem to know and believe that yoga is good for us.
Yes.
And will say, you're feeling
Recommend.
stressed. They'll recommend you're feeling stressed, you're not sleeping well, maybe you should try some yoga.
Yes.
Which is great. At least that it's a start right there. But hormone yoga therapy is so narrowed down to and specific to increasing our levels of our hormones, like we talked about,
It's
and
so
balancing.
niche.
It's so niche that, you know, when I've tried to talk to my GP about hormone yoga therapy, it was like, oh, it's great, you're a yoga teacher, I'm so happy for you. Like, so I haven't been able to get through to her about it. Now, when Dina, so this is really, really interesting story that I really like to share, and I share it in all my classes, and I like to, if I do a one-on-one with somebody, I'll often share it with them, is Dina was 60 years old, so well past, like well into postmenopause, and in Brazil, I'll speak to Brazil and Argentina and Chile, so countries in South America, they get their hormones checked every year. Automatically, it's just part of their physical. And her hormones were consistently elevated at a level as not to be in menopause. Like they were at the level of a non-menopausal person.
Okay.
And her doctor would ask her, what do you do? And she goes, well, I do my yoga, and I created this program, and I call it hormone yoga therapy, da-da-da-da-da-da. And he said, well, do you want to work together with me, and we'll do a test study? So they did one there. And I don't know how many women were in that test study. And so there is that on the internet. It's really hard to find. And then from there, she started traveling to Germany, and there were doctors in Germany who were really, really, truly interested. Medical Western doctors, might I say. So medical Western doctors who were very interested, and in Czech Republic as well. Now, these are all done in Portuguese, German, and Czech.
Okay.
Nothing in English. But I have pulled up a few things on PubMed, and Dina Rodriguez's name comes up, and there's a little bit of information, but not a whole lot. But yoga's a science. And so we know that there is scientific evidence behind yoga in general. So I think we can believe that if we think about hormone yoga therapy being niche down to helping our endocrine system.
And it's in the results. So if you are going through a lived experience of transition in menopause, that is immense. Isn't
It's
it worth
life-changing.
trying anything? Isn't it worth it?
I know.
It's worth it.
It's worth it. And what did our grandmothers call it? I didn't know the word menopause, because my grandmother, my baba, it was change of life. And I remember thinking, what does that mean? Like being younger and thinking like, what does that mean? Change of life. And I don't know if anybody refers to it, but it is a change of life.
Very big change.
Yes, and
so
much bigger. And I wanted my change of life to be. I mean, it started off a little bit like this, but I wanted to continue with my chill, happy disposition, and not feel. Because again, crazy hormones can just make you feel like something is so off.
Oh, can it ever? You wanted to feel maybe some ease and grace. Through this change of life.
Right.
Through this new chapter.
And it continues. So I would love to say menopause and beyond, because as we mentioned, it just doesn't end after that 1 year of not having a cycle,
Yes.
it's what's beyond. So some of the things that postmenopausal women will experience more so than peri or very newly menopause is that the memory loss can get worse, or more, it could just be there more, and cardiovascular. So heart disease and heart attacks aren't talked about a lot in women. We think of men, you know, having the lifestyle that will induce a heart attack, but for women it's more silent and deadly.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So this yoga also speaks to our hearts, like physically our hearts, and keeping that whole, our circulatory system, again, that's the chi, right? Really, really flowing and getting everything moving at a pace that is meant for sort of our time.
Right.
Our time, yeah.